Welcome to Bowness Hill Climb Revival. Bowness is one of the most historic motorsport events in Scottish history. It started in 1934 and competitive hill climbs were held here right up to the war, and then in 1947 Bowness hosted the first British Hill Climb Championship run, and that went on until 1967, and then sadly Bowness had to close. And then in 2007 a group of guys got together with the idea of reviving Bowness Hill Climb, and the first hill climb took place here in 2008. And let's have a look at some of the cars typical of the old period and typical of the revival entry. So first of all, this wonderful Bentley Special, based on a Mark VI Bentley, immensely quick, with the 4 1/4 litre engine, and contrasting with that, next door to it, is the little Austin Healey Sprite, the original, what was called, for obvious reasons, the Frog Eye Sprite. And if we go around to the front of the car, you'll see exactly why it was called the Frog Eye. And sadly, although it was very evocative and interesting, the Mark II Sprite had a much more orthodox body shape. But the Sprite was a lovely little inexpensive and fun sports car in the late 50s. And its predecessor was the Austin Healey, which came in both 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder versions. And this is a lovely example of a 4-cylinder Austin Healey, developed by Austin and the Healey Company in Warwick, and sold like hotcakes, particularly in the States. And the modified versions, which were faster than standard, the 100M and later on the 100S, you can recognize them by the louvers on the bonnet. Very nice, very rapid and relatively inexpensive sports car. Let's move on to have a look at perhaps an even more exotic classic sports car. This is the Jaguar XK140. Its predecessor, the XK120, was an absolute sensation when it appeared at the motor show in 1948. It was really built as a way of publicizing Jaguar's new straight-six twin-cam engine that was destined for the big Mark VII Jaguar saloon. And Jaguar thought, well, let's make a few just to publicize the engine. And the XK120 was such a raving success at the London and then the New York Motor Show that Bill Lyons, who ran Jaguar, very quickly had to realize they had to put it in serious production, which they did. The first few with aluminium bodies are incredibly rare and incredibly valuable, but the XK120 led to this, the XK140, which was a rather more sophisticated and more comfortable version, and then the XK150 came out, and finally it led to the E-Type, and we all know about the E-Type, and a bit later on we'll have a look at a typical and beautiful E-Type. But even more exciting, while this car was being produced for the road, an even more exciting car was sweeping the field at the classic Le Mans 24-hour race. Let's go and have a look at that. Bill Lyons then saw wonderful opportunities for Jaguar, publicity opportunities from the Le Mans 24-hour race, and in 1951 Jaguar developed the C-Type Jaguar, which was a development of the XK120 that we've just seen the 140 and talked about. And then in 1954, well, they won a race in 51 and 53. And then in 1954, they came up with the most revolutionary designed by a guy called Malcolm Sayer, and that was the classic and iconic D-Type Jaguar. And here's a lovely example of the D-Type, which competed first at Le Mans in 1954, and would have won, but for all sorts of annoying problems that delayed it, one of which was pouring rain. And then in 1955, 56 and 57, D-Types swept the field. Those, of course, were the works cars, but then Jaguar put the D-Type into limited production so that private owners could buy them, race them, And one came to Scotland and is now in the hands of David Allen. Well, is it really, David?
I'm custodian of it, I think.
The story is that the D-Type was bought by Henry Taylor. Am I right, the white one?
TKF9 was raced by Henry Taylor and then 2 years later by Jim Clark in Scotland.
And TKF9 still exists in the hands of a famous collector, but was it Henry who commissioned the I hate the word replica, but the recreation of TKF9?
He did indeed. Henry knew Brian Wingfield very well through Ford competitions, and Henry really wanted to buy the original car. He couldn't, and he got Brian Wingfield to recreate it as close to the original car as possible, and that is this one, and Henry owned it for many years.
And I mean, we're talking about replicas and recreations, but Brian Wingfield was renowned for making them absolutely right. So some of the replicas had E-type rear suspension, but this one is absolutely right.
It's absolutely right. It has the live rear axle of the Jaguar D-type. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And David Barnett, who's standing with us, is going to drive it. He's the brave guy to pedal this priceless D-type up Bowness. David, have you driven it a lot?
I've driven a handful of road miles in it, so yes, I'm a little bit apprehensive probably, but that's mixed with a childhood dream of always competing in a Jaguar D-type. So yeah, fantastic.
Now, Duncan Hamilton is reputed to have driven a D-type at Le Mans at 210 miles an hour down the Mulsanne Straight. So we're expecting big things at Bowness, maybe not 210.
But that was with some alcohol in them.
in the car, in the driver, exactly right. It was. But isn't it a lovely car? And I imagine it's perfect to drive on the road.
It's lovely. It's just a gorgeous car to run.
Brilliant. And it's so... did Jimmy ever drive the D-type here at Bowness?
I don't think so. He drove at Charterhall and he drove at Crimond in Aberdeenshire, but I think these were the two Scottish events he did when he had that car.
I think
I think that's a very interesting point, though, that you actually saw him race TKF9.
I did. As my first motorsports event as a 12-year-old, watching Jimmy racing TKF9 at Crimond, and hence my interest in this car when it came up.
Absolutely. Well, it must be a treat to own. Jimmy did compete here in a Lister Jaguar, didn't he?
Yes, that was a year later, I think. Yeah.
But what a lovely car! Fantastic. We can't wait to hear that beautiful straight six growl of the D-type. Thanks, guys. That was great. So competition is about to start here at Bowness, and gives me a chance to talk a little bit about what hill climbing is all about. Basically, it's a race against the clock. So the cars start on the starting line down beyond the paddock near the railway line, where we've been interviewing people down there, and they come rushing up and through the woods and into here, the courtyard, which is a very quick left and right, and the finishing line is about 100 yards further up the hill. So it's a relatively short hill. Fast times are around the 30-second mark, and hill climbing is always divided up into various classes. So people often start in a Mini or a Caterham or a Lotus 7 and graduate up. So we've got classes for saloon cars, for sports cars, and for racing cars. And if you ever go to a modern championship hill climb event, the top cars are incredibly quick. They're probably faster up to 100 miles an hour than a current Formula One car. So what people tend to do is start in one of the lower classes, the saloons, the little sports cars, and graduate right up to the championship cars. And pretty soon we'll see cars rushing up through the courtyard and illustrating what hill climbing is all about. You can get close to the cars, close to the action. It's a very friendly sport. People are not hiding you behind barbed wire fences, catch fences. As you can see, we've got straw bales to protect the scenery. And of course, this is normally a park, famous Kinneal House in the background, and for one weekend of the year, the owners of these houses very kindly allow us to have racing cars rushing past their front doors. So off we go with our competitive runs, kicked off by our oldest car in the meeting this weekend. It's the 1911 Prince Henry Vauxhall, which we'll hear more about later on from its owner, Alistair Lockhart. Driven today by Alec Brown, who was one of the team that worked incredibly hard through 2007 into 2008 to bring Bowness back to life. Alec is a highly experienced hill climber, has won championships in much faster cars than this, but nevertheless really enjoying the Prince Henry, slightly concerned about the difficulty slowing it down. It's only got two-wheel brakes, but nevertheless into courtyard in fine style, and then up to the finishing line. Next up is Nick Rossi in the lovely Alfa Romeo 1750 GS that we'll find out much more about after the break. So here's Nick Rossi in this lovely Alfa Romeo car that has lived in the UK all its life. Nick Rossi bought it as a pile of bits and rebuilt it beautifully, built the body himself, very nice, very rapid. Alvis produced a limited range of front-wheel drive cars in 1928, and this is a very rare supercharged example. They didn't have constant velocity joints that we all enjoy now in our front-wheel drive cars, so there's a certain amount of fight back from the steering. And it meant that Alvis limited their front-wheel drive cars to sports and sports racing cars. Cost them a fortune to develop the front-wheel drive car and nearly bankrupted the company. So after 1931, they went back to making much more conventional cars. And Willie Beattie successfully up and over the finishing line in this very rare car. Now, if you wanted a sports car shortly after the war, there wasn't much available. So what you did, you went to the scrapyard, you picked up an old Austin 7, chucked away the body, lowered the suspension, built a little aluminium body, and you ended up with a very rapid little sports car. And they're still incredibly popular in vintage racing. This is Mike Pickup, who storms up the hill in a brilliant time, 33.73. A bit more sophisticated than the Austin 7 was the Riley, the Brooklands Riley in particular, and this is a lovely example in the hands of Simon Scott, named after, of course, the famous motor racing track in Surrey, where a very gifted engineer called Freddie Dixon worked wonders on the little 1100cc engines in these Rileys to produce prodigious amounts of power. And the Brooklands Riley was very, very successful in sports car racing in the 30s. Simon Scott through the courtyard over the finishing line with quite a competitive 44.79. Okay, one of the nice things about Bowness Revival is that a number of the drivers who competed here in the early days, before the hill closed in '67, have come back, and Bill Dryden is one of them. And Bill, you competed here in all sorts of cars, starting with the Vauxhall, I think.
That's correct, yes. It was saloon cars to start with, Vauxhall VX 490s, and eventually into Lotus 26Rs.
26R was a race version of the Elan, had a fairly mixed reputation as being an easy car to drive.
Well, funny enough, I read the other day that Jackie Stewart, who drove them, said he found it difficult. I thought it was a lovely car to drive.
Well, after the VX 490, anything would be.
Exactly. No, it was a very quick car, and I've tried to buy one recently, but unfortunately the price now to even get a semi-good one is into 130, 150,000, which is really just so much money.
And then you went on to drive some of the Ecos cars, the 2.5 litre Climax engine car, and was that for the Ecos team?
Yes, it was. The great friend of mine, Bill Steen, was seriously hurt at Brands Hatch, and David Murray came to me and said, look, we've got Ingleson coming up, we've got the 2.5 litre Climax, which Bill used to drive. Would you drive it? And I'd never driven a rear engine single seater in my life. But anyway, I did, and I did 3 meetings in it, but it was getting a bit old by then, and wheels began to fall off. It was a bit exciting.
Yes, I bet. What was the Ecos Imp? Was that a little single-seater as well?
That was just being built then, because Ingleston had a very tight circuit, and they didn't want to have the big wide climax, which was you know, on the track, very difficult to overtake other cars. And they brought out the Imp, which was the exact opposite. It was minute, and Graham Burrell and I were squeezed into it because it was built for Bill Steen. Yeah. And Bill is that height, yeah. And we're this height. Yeah. And it was very narrow and very light. In fact, it was too light. It bounced about too much, but it was interesting.
Yeah. Now, talking Bowness, has it changed much since when you were competing here?
It's amazing when you come down into the paddock here. It's amazingly similar to what I remember. Some of the faces, some of the cars are the same. The faces are older, unfortunately, like us all. But the hill climb itself has changed in that the start has gone back along the side of the railway line to compensate for the top bit of the hill, which is now houses. Yeah. But the central bit of the hill is exactly as it was.
There was an S-bend, a chicane, on the way up to the finish, which had an evil reputation, didn't it?
That had, and it was called in my day the Wiggle Woggle.
Yeah.
And it was a fast right, left, fast right again, and it really was quite exciting.
It had some funny camber changes, I think.
Yes, and I think the fact is that it was quite far up from the house, and people were really getting wound up by then. Yeah. Brakes were still cold, and you came up there, and some people didn't quite get round it.
Yeah. And in those days, it was pretty much one of the premier motorsporting events in Scotland. Did you get big crowds?
Well, there was big crowds, and it was something you looked forward to every year. In fact, I seem to recall there was 2 meetings a year. I may be wrong, but no, it was certainly well attended, and the paddock was always full, and everybody looked forward to it.
And of course, hosted British Hill Climb Championship, the first one in 1947.
That's correct. I used to come here as a little boy. I went to the rest with thankful my parents, and I was brought here once, and I saw the twin rear-wheel DRA of, I think, Ken Wharton, and never did I dream that I'd be doing it myself one day.
That was quite a car, and a needle match between Ken, was it the Flockhart in the ERA and Ken in the Cooper 500?
I remember David Bosher-Jones was another of these hill climb experts, because they didn't really do circuit racing. Sure. They concentrated on the hill climbs, and in fact, when we ran the Elan the last time, we got into the top 10 runoff, because the Elan was an exceptionally quick little car. Sure. And it got in amongst the single-seaters, which was a bit embarrassing for some of them, but good for us.
It's great that Falkirk Council have financed the resurfacing of the hill. It's got a lovely surface now.
It is. I mean, this is most important because they've got to get the power down, and you can't get the power down if you're on a bumpy surface. And it's great to see things like this happening again, because it gives a lot of people something different to do at a weekend.
And we're blessed with typical Scottish summer weather, which is a bonus, as always.
As always. It never rains in Scotland, does it?
Never. Bill, lovely to see you. Have a great weekend, as we all will.
Thank you very much.
So while talking to Bill, we've seen some of the faster cars, Jock McKinnon's Bentley, the very rapid chain-drive Fraser-Nash, and maybe the most famous hill climb car, certainly the most famous pre-war hill climb car of all, the amazing Spider, which won lots of hill climbs, broke lots of records in the hands of Basil Davenport. Now we're watching Roger Williams in another Austin 7 special with the SpeedX body. It's great to see people back here who competed in period, and here's Duncan Patterson and Donald Brown, and they're eyeing this course with a certain amount of, with a jaundiced eye, saying these guys, straw bales, that's a bit sissy, isn't it, Duncan?
Yes, we never had them back then. You had a solid wall you had to come round.
So if you,
very solid.
If you hit the house, that was uncomfortable.
It would have been, yes. I never did it.
Yeah. Duncan, you hill climbed here with MGs primarily.
Yes, it was always MGs.
Always MG.
Yeah.
And you're still an MG enthusiast,
I am indeed.
despite everything.
Yes. Well,
Donald, you were more a Lotus man, I think.
Well, that was what I had as my first real competition car.
Right.
I'm still tempted by MGs. In fact, I have a couple at the moment.
Right.
Largely because it's the way to keep me out of motorsport, at least at this active level of motorsport. Because I'm one of these people who is an appalling spectator. And every time I came back, having retired, every time I came back to an event, I saw another car that I thought I could beat that, I could go quicker, and I ended up back competing again. So I've stopped that now.
I know the feeling. Now, nowadays we've got a scaffolding on which the poor commentator sits, but in those days he used to hang out of a window of this house, I think.
I used to be very worried about the poor chap because right on the gable end up here there was a little wooden extension built which had a window or two in it, and that was where they commentated from. And I wouldn't say that actually distracted me, but it certainly was the sort of thing you thought about. If you walloped the building below him, what would happen to him?
Did he ever fall out and give the spectators a good laugh?
I can't remember that.
You must be thrilled that the hill climb here at Bowness has been revived.
well, yes. I mean, it was one of the main motorsport events in Scotland for many years. And
Tis now.
yes, some of the greatest drivers in the country came here.
Yeah.
The people at Stirling Moss.
Yeah.
Well,
Flockhart, Jimmy Clark.
well, Jim was a local that competed in anything in Scotland.
Yes.
But even Peter Collins, the Grand Prix driver, I remember seeing him here.
In a Cooper.
No, it was a JBS 500.
Even more exotic. The thing about hill climbing is that so many Grand Prix drivers got their introduction to motorsport through hill climbing. Sterling did, Peter Collins, as you said, did. And what I find nowadays, you watch racing at Goodwood, where one or two of the drivers are ex-hill climbers, they're good, and they're particularly good at the start. Because the hill climb start is crucial. If you lose a tenth, you never get it back. Thanks very much for coming. You're going to wallow in your memories the whole weekend, I hope, or just today?
No, here for the whole weekend. Yeah,
Doing the thing properly.
hopefully.
Duncan and Donald, enjoy your weekend while the cars go past us. It's a treat, isn't it?
Thank you very much.
So into another break with Colin McLaughlin's lovely PA midget chick in this very elegant So back into hill climbing with Branislav Suchik in this very elegant Hotchkiss from just before the war, 1938. Competed in the Monte Carlo Rally, has a really interesting hood arrangement. Hotchkiss, maker of luxury and sporty cars in France until the 50s, and then taxed out of existence, and they ended up making military vehicles and continued doing that for some time. Branislav has a collection of really interesting cars. The car that will blow spectators' minds, particularly if they are down at the start line, is the incredible Bentley Napier of Chris Williams. This is a Bentley chassis into which Chris has squeezed 24-litre W12 engine, Napier engine, which was used in aeroplanes, airships, motor torpedo boats. Chris, anything else that was used in?
No, it's basically the biplane era sort of motor. Just fitted about 60 different aircraft at the time. Took lots of land records. First plane to fly to Australia non-stop. But in motoring, it took the world land speed record 5 times. No other engine's done that. 5 times from the 20s right through to Cobb's post-war, 300 plus mile an hour.
And W12, what does that mean?
Basically, you've got 3 banks of 4 cylinders, with a master con rod and 2 slave rods, so it's all in line. You've got a 3-cylinder fan, 4 in a row.
So the power comes in at 0 revs and stops at about 2.5.
2.5, 2-ish, yeah. It's got about 600 horsepower at 2,000 revs and 1,250 pounds-feet of torque.
And a certain amount of wheel spin off the line.
Just a little bit now and then, yeah. We can use the wheel spin to advantage, just say trashing the transmission.
So you're the best customer of the tyre supplier that you use?
When I go past, they all stand to attention and they look at the holiday brochures. We can shift a pair of tyres in one race at Silverstone. 110 lap, I will shift 600 quid pair of tyres.
And a 4-speed gearbox?
It's got 4-speed box, but you don't need. In this circuit today, I will choose a gear and just leave it there.
But at Silverstone in top 140, 150?
No, not that quick. It's geared less than that. It's over 100 mile an hour, but it's not way up into the 50s, not at Silverstone.
Now, Chris, this car wasn't quite big enough for you, so you went and did something else. Tell me about that.
We put a 42-litre supercharged 1500 horsepower Packard engine in the Bentley. It seemed a good idea at the time.
And that's Mavis, and Mavis scares people crazy because when you start it, flames leap out at sort of waist high.
It has been known to flame somewhat, yeah.
Did you cook your breakfast on it?
We have been known to do that. It'll shift a gallon of fuel in 15 seconds.
So what's the next project? It'll be about 60 litres, won't it?
No, the next project is actually a 3-cylinder radial engine going in a Bentley with a Bristol Lucifer aircraft engine. That's on the pipeline at the moment.
Well, we're all going to look forward to watching the Bentley Napier going up Bowness. It's, as you say, it's a bit short and tight for a car like this, but you'll have fun, and so will we.
We'll all have fun, that's the main thing.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Lovely to talk to Chris Williams. Always enjoys his motorsport, always wears a bowler hat. Now back with the sprite of Matthew Hazelwood, whose original owner for some reason chucked away the frog eye body and had this one made by A.G. Thorpe in about 1966. I think they only made one or two. I wonder why. Now this is not Granny off to the supermarket. This is Brian Ash's incredibly rapid Austin A35. And Austin A35s we've seen at various historic races, really annoying the big Jaguars by overtaking them on the corners, really teasing them unmercifully. And there is even a race series now for A35s. Can't believe how narrow they are, but they're quick. Here's Fraser Ewart in the Frog Eye Sprite that we discussed earlier. Fraser is also driving the incredible Bentley Special, the silver one we saw in the introduction, which I accused of having a 4.25 litre engine. Actually, of course, it's got a 6.25 litre turbocharged V8, which is why it's so quick. And Fraser really hustles these cars up the Bowness Hill, enjoying very rapid times in both cars. Bowness Hill Climb Revival is held in the grounds of Kinneil House, which is a historic, rather grim, stately home in Scotland, home to royalty and aristocracy over hundreds of years. And in the corner, round the corner from the house, is what looks like nothing on earth, which is actually an incredibly historic building. Let's go and have a look at it. Look at this little building behind me, little stone block. Looks like a World War II bunker, but it's not. It's actually an incredibly historic building, particularly for enthusiasts of steam, because this is the workshop where James Watt did his early experiments on steam power that led, of course, to the steam engine. And behind me is a steam cylinder that was involved with one of the very early engines way back in the 1760s, 1770s. So really this ought to be a place of pilgrimage for steam enthusiasts all over the world. And we're privileged to have our hill climb in the grounds of Kinneil House. Here's Jim Campbell in the beautiful green Austin Healey 100M. Jim has competed for a long time, a great exponent in Aston Martins, but now in this lovely Austin Healey that came back from California, has been completely rebuilt using the very low windscreen that Austin Healey used when they raced at Le Mans. A rapid car, converted in 2002. Jim's been driving it for the last couple of years in historic racing. Next to Trevor McIlroy in the Sebring Sprite. Sebring because the Austin Healey entered works cars in the 3-hour race at Sebring in Florida with this very pretty fixed head fastback body, and Trevor's developed this to be a very fast competition car, gets the car up the hill in 33.27. I'm with John Melvin, and John drove one of the most expensive and most admired sports cars in the 50s, the Le Mans replica Fraser-Nash. John, here are some pictures of you, not here at Bowness, but racing and hill climbing, and something interesting happened, I think, was it at Turnberry, and a certain Mr. Stewart?
Yes, Jackie Stewart came up and asked me for my autograph.
I bet it's a...
Because the last time I was with him, a lot of people were coming up wanting Jackie's autograph, and I reminded them. But no, we're still keep in touch, we're good friends.
I bet it's one of his treasured possessions. Now, how many times did you compete at Bowness in period?
I think 4 or 5 times.
Oh, always in the Nash or in something else as well?
Started off with an HRG,
yeah,
and I raced it a couple of times here, and then went on to the Fraser-Nash after that.
Yes.
And then I went to do my army service, and my father sold the car while I was away.
Without asking you?
No, he didn't ask. There we go.
Now, the Nash was quite a small car, and you're quite a big guy. Did you fit in it comfortably?
No. It was a bit of a job.
Yeah.
But I managed, but that's one reason I had to keep into single-seaters. I couldn't go into single-seaters because of my size. I'm 6'3".
Yeah.
But I've been in the car since and driven it when one of my friends had it down south.
JYS3, it's still around, still racing in wonderful condition.
The car is still in magnificent condition.
It is.
I saw it down, Ian Dalglish has got it, I saw it racing in the historic race down at Monaco, and I'm planning to go over again next year to see it, because it's remarkable to see how these old cars kept going. It's a real credit to the people that built them.
It is. Now, Bowness, it was a lovely meeting in the early days, big crowds. Has it changed greatly since you were competing here?
Well, I think the thing is that the track itself, really, in a way, is quite as interesting, but it's remarkable how all these people with old classic cars come along and show them off and enjoy driving up a relatively modest track.
Yeah.
Because in the old days, it was really quite exciting, because we had the snake bend, and you came out of the courtyard flat out, and then you went into the snake. HRG I could take flat, but not with a Fraser-Nash. I had to ease off. I think we were way up in about 37, 38 seconds.
So we got the right sort of noises in the background. It's always been a fun event, and isn't it great for Bowness that the revival has, in a way, brought Bowness into the people's focus?
I think it's remarkable, and full marks. It's just this whole business of older cars and the way their values have gone and the way that so many people are interested in them. I think it's marvelous. It's a really credit. I mean, the real enthusiasts now we have, and a lot of them are here. Tremendous to see them. It's marvelous to see them.
And John, looking at the photographs, you haven't changed a bit since 1952.
I'll be 86 next year. But they call me a bit like a Peter Pan, but never mind, that's life. I've been very lucky in life.
We all have. Lovely to meet you. Thanks very much. The storming run up the hill by Steve Muir in his Sprite 2996. That's very quick. Here's Alex Hazelwood in the Sprite modified body that we saw before. Alex looks after the website for Bowness. Lots of interesting information always on that, always updated. Here's Neil Hopkinson's Mini. Mini is a great way to start hill climbing and racing. Modified the engine, great run over the finishing line. Another Mini, not quite so fast and modified, belonging to Eddie Bierman. Very attractive in its grey colour with a yellow roof. Still a wide track. Through Croyett, up to Old Paddock, and into the sunshine of the courtyard. We had a class of Triumph sports cars from the TR register. Here's James Coulthard in the TR3, which took over from the original TR2. Very simple, nice four-cylinder sports car. All motorsport in this country is under the guidance of the Royal Automobile Club, and Tom Purvis is chairman of the Royal Automobile Club, so it's a major responsibility for the Royal Automobile Club to look after us.
Well, thank you very much for putting it that way. Actually, the governing body of the sport is the MSA, which was separated from the Royal Automobile Club some years ago, but we still have a heavy involvement with it.
Yeah.
And we're delighted to be here today at Bo'ness. I mean, this is the origin of the British Hill Climb Championship.
It is, yeah.
And I came here as a little boy in the 50s, and I remember Spike Riando and Peter Bosher-Jones and people going up that hill.
Yeah.
So when the revival came along, I really wanted to do it personally, but I'm also very interested to see it because I think it's a classic example of a genuine event that people thoroughly enjoy, not only competing but spectators coming. We have a rich history in motorsport in Scotland. I'm chairman of a thing called Scottish Motorsports, where we're talking to the Holyrood government about investment in the sport in general. We have fantastic history, Dario Franchitti, Jim Clark, Jackie Stewart, Ecurie Cost, and of course with two wheels as well.
Yeah.
So being here and seeing how the organisation works very well for what is a small paddock and a small event is helpful to me.
Is the word getting around Scotland about Bo'ness?
Yes, I think it is. It started a few years ago. More and more people are aware of it. More and more people in the south are aware of it as well.
Sure.
We've got a lot of cars here with our own TR register coming from the north of England.
Yeah.
And people love the atmosphere. They love the history too. They love the atmosphere.
Yeah. Has it changed very much to look at since you were here as a child?
It's very similar, except a little bit different after you go through the chicane. It used to be longer.
Yes.
And also, but I remember very well the hill up and watching these Cooper 500s and these Lister Jaguars and things being driven by ladies on some occasions up that hill, that long right-hand bend. It's quite technical hill climb.
It is.
It's short, but quite
is.
complex.
What always strikes me looking from the courtyard down is how these trees have grown. You used to be able to see right over the further forth. Now it's a line of trees, which is actually very pretty.
Yes, it's extremely pretty, and of course we're in a location that's delightful with the courtyard. And there must be very few hill climbs in Britain where you actually go in between buildings.
Yes.
But I think it's just an iconic nature, the fact that it's been in hill climbing for as long as we can all remember.
Yeah. And we're honoured that Prince Michael has come to see what's going on.
Yes, well, he's the patron of our club, president of our club, and he was at Holyrood Palace yesterday, where we had the Concours of Excellence, which worked very well. Marvellous cars, terrific display of the world's greatest collector cars, and a club concourse that we ran, and thoroughly, we all enjoyed the day, and then the opportunity to come here, mixing a combination of presentation yesterday with action today.
Yeah. Well, it's great that so many people have come, particularly Prince Michael. But Tom, thank you for all the support you give us, and long may Bo'ness and Scottish motorsport continue.
No, that's it. Look, it's a very important sport for Scotland. We've got a great heritage. Yesterday, Dario Franchitti was with us all day. Jackie Stewart is fantastically supportive. Alan McNish is extremely supportive. We all know how important motorsport is for Scotland.
Yeah.
It's our job to tell actually the public and the government as well.
Absolutely. Dario is playing cricket at Goodwood on Thursday, and Marino. I hope he doesn't get knocked on the head by a cricket ball.
I hope not.
Tom, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Here's Drum and Bone in the very pretty Alfa Romeo Giulia Sprint GT, sort of car that competed against the Lotus Cortinas in European touring car racing in the 60s, originally fitted with the famous Alfa Romeo twin-cam engine. Tony McLaughlin Escort. Escorts took over from the Cortinas as the mainstay of Ford's competition cars in saloon car racing and rallying. Won the London to Mexico rally, hence the Escort Mexico, and eventually highly developed with the twin cam and then the BDA engine. Very rapid car, driven a lot in period by Roger Clark. Couple of little Elans, Kenny Allen, who's been hill climbing for a long time, fixed head and fixed headlight Elan, and then he's followed by an even quicker one. This is Jim Grant's white one, with the bonnet slightly having a mind of its own. Here's Jim Grant. Morgan Motor Company are doing really well nowadays, selling more and more cars, developing more cars, getting more and more interested in motor racing than they were before. And the distributor for Morgan in Scotland is Revolutions, run by Russell Patterson, who's also very much involved in racing. And Russell, tell us about Morgan Racing and in particular this car.
Morgan have their own series now. In fact, we just celebrated 30 years of that series at Brands Hatch last weekend in the pouring rain, unfortunately. This particular car, Morgan themselves have started building a model for racing, and it's called the ARV6. It's a roadster. It's based on which has a 3.7 litre Mustang engine with 320 horsepower. This is the first customer car, which we supplied about 3 months ago, and the owner of it allows me to race it, and that owner also sponsors my son to race. We run from Scotland 5 cars in this series, and so it's a fairly large logistical problem because all the series is either down south or abroad. But we have some people that like the way we prepare cars, and we all do rather well in the championship.
To the untutored eye, most Morgans look exactly the same. So how does this one differ from the regular road-going car?
This has a slightly different body on it. It has no doors. It's a solid body. Other than that, yeah, the profile, other than perhaps the near side with the flat side, is very similar to all the road cars. Obviously stripped out. It doesn't have heaters. It doesn't have spare seats. It's alloy inside rather than wood, but the frame is still wood. That's bolted to the steel chassis. And yeah, you could register this car for the road. In fact, this car will be registered for the road next year.
You're getting huge entries in Morgan Racing, divided into classes. I think you told me the number of cars at Brands Hatch. It's just stunning, isn't it?
Yeah, it was superb. There were 52 or 54 entries at Brands Hatch for last Monday for the 30-year celebration of the series. But because we were running on the small circuit, the Indy circuits, we had to split the grid. So there was about 26 in each race. And frankly, that's busy at such a small circuit.
That's a traffic jam in the pouring rain.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. Yes, it was survival, to be honest. But it was good. It was a great race, great meeting, really well run. And 2 months before that, we were all at Spa, and there were about 54, 56 cars in the grid at Spa. But Spa can take a huge entry. Just with a couple of 40-minute races over there, which is just epic.
So up the straight at Spa to Les Combes, you're doing what, 130, 140 or more?
Yeah, but probably more than that. It's hard to tell. I wasn't really looking at the speedometer. This actually has a Cosworth dashboard on it, so it's different from the old analog ones, which are slightly easier to read, to be honest. But yeah, if you get a rouge right, which you don't every time one tries, yeah, you could be pulling quite a speed up towards the curb. Yeah.
And handling, nice and predictable. Doesn't give you any nasty surprises.
No, Morgan's handled beautifully. I think they're a surprise to many people on track that don't know Morgan. It's just how quick they are, and it's not just about the performance of the engine. They're beautifully balanced. But yeah, you get a bit of turn and understeer with most Morgans, but because of the delivery of power and the amount of power they have, you can tease the background and make the back follow the front. So actually, they handle magnificently.
And is the season coming to a close? How many more races have you got?
We've got 3 left. We're at Oulton Park next weekend on the Saturday. About 2-3 weeks later, we're at Donington and then Snetterton. And it's the factory are actually at Snetterton is a 4-hour race, and the factory are running an ARV6 team, which we're trying to actually win outright, the scratch race rather than the handicap.
Does that finish in the dark?
No, hopefully not.
Not supposed to anyway.
Well, yeah, we'll see what happens, yeah.
Russell, lovely talking to you. It's great to see the enthusiasm, as always, behind Morgan. Best of luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you very much.
Well, it's been a fantastic day. We've had pretty much perfect weather. It's a bit chilly, but we've had super runs all day. 1 or 2 slight mishaps, but nothing serious. And second fastest time of day goes to Robert Bramner in this amazing and extremely powerful Cobra. Robert, 28.45, 28.33. Personal best, but not quite your ambition.
No personal best, but I was hoping to get down sub 28 seconds, 27. Would have liked fastest time of the day, but Malcolm keeps beating me. It's the same every year. So you should try harder.
But tomorrow, maybe your revenge?
Tomorrow's another day. I'll do my best. Whether I get there or not, we'll see tomorrow.
the Cobra seemed to be behaving itself beautifully.
It was running a wee bit off in the afternoon, but I don't think it made any difference to my times, to be honest. So, yeah,
Good.
All about tomorrow now.
Yes, and then you've got the Connaught as a second treat.
Yes, it was running great yesterday. Thoroughly enjoying myself. A wee bit wild at the top of the courtyard at one point, but it was good.
And tomorrow a star driver in the Connaught. That'll be interesting.
Very interesting. Show me how it's done properly.
Anthony Reid's going to be driving the Connaught tomorrow. Robert, congratulations. Second fastest time of day. Wonderful to see the Cobra and the Connaught.
Thank you very much.
We've had a day of fantastic competition here at Bowness. The weather's been great, the competition's been pretty fierce, but coming out on top is Malcolm Wishart in this beautiful little Lotus. Beat the Cobra, just,
Chris, yes.
But Malcolm, you were really going for it today.
It was great fun. It's been a wonderful day, actually, Chris. And I think the track conditions improved throughout the day, and the track really started to come in, and that meant every day closed up, so the competition became really quite tight.
The surface is good, isn't it? It's quite grippy.
It is very grippy. The bottom end a little slippier coming up to the bridge because of the trees, but after that it becomes really very grippy and very, very fast.
Yes.
The top end.
And the Lotus behaved itself, apart from, I think, one little adventure in the courtyard.
One little adventure which it got slightly sideways, I believe, but somebody, I think, had dropped a little oil. So I'll try not to repeat that. It was not the right idea.
That's driver's excuse number 38.
Absolutely, I've got a boot full.
Malcolm, congratulations. It's been a great day. Tomorrow, I'm sure it's going to be even better.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. I think the organisers have done a most wonderful job, actually, and so thanks to them, and looking forward to tomorrow very much.